Welcome to today's explainer. Now for this one, we kind of need to lower the lights and drop our voices just a bit. We're going for a hushed, almost conspiratorial vibe here. Why? Because we are about to dig up a suppressed ancient truth that's been hiding right out in the open in our folklore. We are talking about vampires. But listen, we're not talking about the monsters under your bed. We're looking at what they actually represent down in the absolute darkest depths of the human psyche.
There's this quote by the author D.H. Lawrence, and he argued a genuinely terrifying concept. He said that our very spirit, our conscious desire to completely know and possess someone, is inherently vampiric, right? It's intense. So throughout this explainer, we're going to explore how the terrifying myth of the vampire is actually a dark, distorted mirror of human romantic desire. It's essentially a reflection of how our most profound, intimate connections can, well, slowly devour us.
So to do this, we are stepping right past the modern, romanticized Hollywood vampire. You know the ones, the sparkly teenagers and the brooding, misunderstood aristocrats. Actually, scratch that. We're digging much deeper into the grim historical connection between intimate human passion and violent, unyielding consumption. Because our ancestors understood something deeply unsettling about the nature of love, and they intentionally hid it in these monster stories so we wouldn't have to look directly at the truth.
Now, looking at Eros versus Thanatos. In psychology and myth, there's this constant dichotomous war between Eros, which is the life-giving force of love and sexuality, and Thanatos, the destructive, inevitable power of death. And the vampire basically straddles both of these extremes all at once. It captures that exact, terrifying moment when a passionate desire to connect mutates into a destructive urge to consume.
The blood is the life. We've all heard it, but this famous exclamation isn't just about a monster needing biological sustenance. Since ancient times, blood has represented the absolute essence of physical and spiritual existence. So the vampire's thirst reflects our own dangerous and sometimes totally subconscious desire to draw vitality, energy, and even a twisted sense of immortality from the very people we claim to love. But hey, this isn't just theory. Let's unearth 5 distinct, tragic exhibits from the historical record and global folklore. As you'll see, in every single one of these accounts, the delicate line between a devoted lover and a parasitic bloodsucker completely dissolves, and what's left behind is a chilling portrait of romance.
Here's our timeline, spanning from the mythological origins of ancient Greece all the way to centuries-old Irish folklore. And this brilliantly illustrates how this terrifying link between passion and vampirism isn't just some modern fiction invented by Gothic novelists. No way. It's a profound psychological dread that has spanned entire civilizations and centuries of human history, haunting lovers all across the globe.
Starting off in ancient Greece, we find the tragedy of Lamia. According to myth, she was a beautiful mortal and one of the many lovers of Zeus. But, as you can imagine, this wasn't a fairy tale romance. The profound grief and jealousy born from her cursed love affair completely shattered her sanity, and it ultimately transformed her into a legendary, shape-shifting monster with the lower body of a snake. A creature who literally prowled the night, preying on the innocent just to satisfy a hunger born entirely of a broken heart.
Moving on to ancient Rome, we find a brutal, documented historical account. The daughter of Emperor Antoninus Pius fell madly, intoxicatingly in love with a gladiator, a sword player, and the cure, recommended by the scholars and wizards of the time, unimaginably dark. The sword player was put to death, and she was forced to drink a draught of his warm blood to rid herself of her romantic obsession. Literally, the physical consumption of blood was prescribed as a dark cure for the disease of love.
Jumping ahead to Bristol in 1738, we uncover a chilling, deeply unsettling event. So a young damsel violently rejected a suitor's romantic advances. Shortly after, she was being blooded, which, was a super common medical practice of the time for minor ailments. And that rejected lover eagerly seized the dish, holding her freshly drawn blood, and he just drank it right then and there. It was this twisted, deeply disturbing proof of his unyielding devotion. Literal bloodlust masquerading as romance, swallowed right in front of horrified onlookers.
By the early 19th century, we see this shifting into popular literary culture with the Minerva press tales. Here, we find a forbidden pact between two lovers, Carlos and Rosalia, and it's sealed with the sharing of blood and a quivering balsamic lip.
These stories explicitly merge the visceral terror of supernatural demons with the highly eroticized nature of the human body. They really set the stage for the seductive vampires we recognize today.
Finally, we look to Ireland and uncover the haunting legend of the Deirg Dubh. She was a renowned beauty, forced into a cruel marriage by a greedy father, who eventually died of a profound, isolated, broken heart. But death couldn't stop her fury. She returned from the cold earth to drain the life entirely from the men who destroyed her. Her story beautifully and honestly tragically intertwines ultimate betrayal with an insatiable, vengeful thirst.
So, looking at these 5 grim tales, we have to pause and ask ourselves a very heavy question. Do vampires represent the inevitable price of love? Were they truly created by our ancestors to warn us? I mean, think about it. Do they represent the terrifying cost of giving yourself entirely to another person? When you open your veins, emotionally speaking, of course, to someone else, are you actually inviting in a creature that will inevitably drain you?
Think about how vampires operate in the old lore for a second. The mythology explicitly tells us about the Maker, the elder vampire who seduces you into the dark. Now, while a small amount of blood can sustain a vampire without killing the victim, the act of consuming that blood triggers intense arousal and hunger. And if the vampire lacks absolute restraint, they slip into an uncontrollable frenzy, a frenzy that inevitably kills the very person they are feeding upon.
And this creates a haunting metaphor for our own human relationships. On one side, we have sustaining affection, taking just enough from your partner to feel loved, validated, and secure, all while keeping them whole. But on the other side, total consumption. It shows how easily our romantic obsessions can cross a dangerous line, shifting from a bond that sustains us to a ravaging hunger that completely destroys our partner.
Which brings us to a deeply unsettling psychological question about the very nature of human desire. Does love rot no matter how much we feed it? If the vampire is this universal, ongoing mythology, like a shadow that has followed humanity through the ages, does that imply we subconsciously believe that love will ultimately decay, regardless of how much time and energy we feed into it?
Well, historical folklore provides a pretty grim answer to that question. Legends often noted that the victims of vampires were doomed to waste away, contracting diseases like consumption, their skin turning pale, just slowly fading into nothing. Meanwhile, the corpse of the vampire flourished in the grave, remaining fresh, plump, and nourished on the stolen life force. One thrives only because the other decays.
Writers like Oscar Wilde and D.H. Lawrence captured this dark truth perfectly. They believe that obsessive passion is essentially a parasite. It literally drains the spirit until the love itself rots from the inside out. To fully know and possess someone is to extinguish their independent spark. The affection basically becomes a suffocating weight.
So, what does this all mean? It means that even the highly romanticized, deeply erotic act of a modern vampire gently biting a victim's neck is a beautiful lie. At its dark, suppressed core, the vampire myth is about a violent taking of life masquerading as intimacy. It's a macabre courtship where survival relies entirely on the absolute depletion of another human soul.
As we close this explainer, I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought to challenge your own romantic mythologies. I want you to look closely at your own relationships, your own deep desires. The next time you feel completely consumed by passion for someone, ask yourself, are you feeding your love, or is your love slowly, quietly feeding on you?